The 2023 season couldn't have started worse for McLaren, with Piastri retiring due to electronic issues and Norris having to pit 6 times due to hydraulic issues on the MCL60. Now, many have expected McLaren to struggle in the upcoming season, but the drop in performance that was showcased in Bahrain wasn't anticipated by anyone, and with this in mind, it seems like Norris will force his way out of the team prior to 2025. Lots of teams are interested in the young Briton's talent, and this time, it seems like his patience and loyalty have already worn out. The Woking-based squad has faced a serious challenge ahead of the 2023 season, and ever since their car was unveiled to the public, Andrea Stella has gone out and said that the design has been totally missed by them and that the competitiveness won't be there to battle with the top teams. But did we anticipate McLaren being the absolutely worst team on the grid, with Aston Martin and Alfa Romeo making huge leaps and leaving Zak Brown's squad back in the dirt? Well, definitely not. Especially after Oscar Piastri, one of the sport's brightest prospects and a potential champion in the making, made the controversial decision to forego a guaranteed spot in Alpine and join McLaren. Keep in mind that McLaren is currently paying Ricciardo $50 million due to the contract buyout, and we don't see the Aussie being the problem for the lack of results and performance after all. However, Piastri is new to Formula 1, and while he has a lot to learn, Norris's patience is wearing thin day after day. Sure, Piastri may regret the decision to leave McLaren and see Gasly and Alpine finishing P8 after starting P20, but that's all in the past. And while he's a safe bet for McLaren's future, the same cannot be said for Norris. The 23-year-old has been part of McLaren in 2019, after the team came from one of the most troublesome periods during their collaboration with Honda. While the 2020 season has proven to be one of the best for the team, with them finishing 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, the downfall couldn't have been more evident from 2021 on. Even though Norris took pole position in Russia and was very close to winning the first race of the season, the team lost the battle with Ferrari, and in 2022, everything went south for the Woking-based squad. This is when talk started to emerge about Norris's potential departure from the team, and he was able to shut them down after signing a contract extension in 2021 when he pledged his allegiance to McLaren until the 2025 season. Back then, Norris and the team had high hopes that after the great 2020 season, the team definitely has potential to fight for championships at certain points in the future, something that seems like a distant and unreachable goal for the future right now. And given the poor start to the 2023 season, Norris is very likely to restart the negotiation processes with other competitive teams, like Red Bull. Keep in mind that the Austrian team tried to bring Norris to their rows twice in the past, with the last time being in 2021, when Norris decided to continue the collaboration with McLaren. While the new wind tunnel is supposed to provide McLaren with a proper boost for the season, and the team is hoping that the upgrade package that they planned in Baku will help them compete for points, it's definitely not the narrative that Norris wants to be part of. The young driver feels like he's wasting his talent with McLaren, and although he tried to remain positive after the Bahrain GP, saying that the most positive thing from the race was his mechanics getting a lot of practice work, we're all aware that tectonic shifts could happen sooner rather than later in Formula 1. This is something that Karun Chandok believes as well, with him thinking that 2 of the teams that have the potential and the project to buy out Norris's contract with McLaren are Ferrari and Red Bull. Furthermore, the Sky F1 pundit believes that the 2023 former McLaren, at least from what we've seen in the first race, will definitely be a facilitator in the young driver's decision, as he went on to add, "I tell you who you will be thinking about a move to Ferrari or Red Bull though, is young Lando Norris. Looking at where McLaren is at, and we were talking before the season of McLaren locking him and Zak doing an amazing job of contracting Norris in for that 4-year period, I do wonder, and if they're smart, they would have created some sort of exit clauses. For example, McLaren don't finish in the top 4 of the Constructors' Championship 2 years in a row. Is there an option for Lando to look elsewhere? Because outside of the traditional top 3 teams, you've got Alonso and Lando, who are your top 2 drivers on the grid, aren't they? And the fact Norris is fighting to even get a car into Q3, there's got to be a bit of frustration there, I would imagine. There is evidently something very wrong with the concept of the MCL60, but is Norris really looking for a way out of the team? Logically, he should think in another direction, but realistically, he feels like the car isn't that bad after the first race of the season, with him adding that the pace of the car was good and the struggles were expected as well. Sure, the hydraulics issues weren't something welcomed by him or the team, but one race is not enough to ensure that Norris is definitely not a long-term investment for McLaren. After all, the fact that Andreas Seidel left the team just a couple of weeks after denying the spot of a team principal in Ferrari just because he'd been invested in McLaren's project goes on to show that the philosophy in the team is definitely not in the right place. With McLaren being well off the pace in 2023 and teams like Red Bull and Ferrari struggling to keep drivers like Perez and Leclerc happy, it seems like we're in for a very interesting period ahead of us. But apart from these two teams, a dark horse could emerge as a potential suitor for Norris, and that's Mercedes. With the W14 also proving to be a non-competitive car, and with Hamilton having no realistic chances of winning the 8th record-breaking championship, which is basically the sole goal of him remaining in the sport in the first place, one couldn't help but wonder, is there a chance that we'll see Norris in Mercedes? The Brackley-based squad definitely has the buyout power and the potential to land Norris, and given the fact that Hamilton has a high opinion of his younger compatriot, we're not so far from seeing this scenario turn into reality. Sure, Norris is also a very close friend of Verstappen, but after what we've seen from Verstappen in Brazil last year, there aren't many drivers that would like to be his teammate. From 2026 on, the new regulations have a lot of potential to shake up the grid entirely, and it seems like Norris would be more than willing to invest in Mercedes' project to dominate the sport yet again. Karun Chandhok has also spoken about this possibility, aside from Ferrari and Red Bull being the highest ranked competitors to land Norris, as he went on to add, his options are to go to Mercedes when Hamilton stops because Russell isn't going anywhere. He can stay at McLaren, I think, until that happens basically. I think McLaren can safely hold on to him until that happens. Then I feel like it's going to be quite a complicated process, because no doubt about it, Lando has got to be the #1 pick. He's got to be Mercedes' #1 pick to replace Lewis. One thing is for sure, Norris is one of the most frustrated drivers on the grid, and even though he's tried to stay positive about the whole fiasco that his team endured in Bahrain, changes are long overdue at McLaren. Rumours are also circulating about a potential change in the directorship of the team, with some people saying that Zak Brown should be brought back to the IndyCar 500 because the team misses a guy like Ron Dennis to bring them back to glory. A similar situation happened in Ferrari, with Leclerc being one of the biggest facilitators for Binotto to exit the team due to the poor calls that cost him the championship, apart from the reliability issues and the driver mistakes. With that in mind, we're supposed to keep a closer eye on Norris and his aspirations, and ever since he joined the grid from 2019 on, it's been evident that he's poised for great success and potentially championships as well. But right now, Norris isn't finding what he's looking for in McLaren, and the chances of him exiting McLaren prematurely and agreeing to a buyout clause like Ricciardo are very high. So what do you think is next with Norris? Do you think that Red Bull, Ferrari or Mercedes have the potential of landing the 23-year-old Briton in their team? Let us know in the comments down below.